I thought buying a quiet little lake cabin would finally give me peace, but I was wrong. One morning, I woke up to a notice taped to my door. The HOA had decided to cut off my water supply. No explanation, no discussion, just pure power play. But here's the twist they didn't know: I control the very plumbing line that feeds the entire neighborhood. And what happened next? Let's just say the HOA had no idea what was coming. At first, I honestly thought the whole thing had to be some kind of misunderstanding. I'd bought this lake cabin to escape the chaos of the city and live quietly, away from trouble. I paid every HOA bill on time, followed their handbook to the letter, and even attended a couple of their meetings just to avoid conflict. So when I saw that notice taped to my door, the one saying my water would be shut off in 72 hours, I couldn't believe it. My first instinct was to call the HOA office and clear things up. But that call changed everything. When I finally got a board member on the line, he didn't sound surprised to hear from me. In fact, he almost sounded smug. Before I could even explain, he cut me off and said, "Maybe this will teach you to pay attention to the board's requests." My stomach dropped. What requests? I had never ignored anything from them. I asked him to explain, but he refused, saying only, "Decisions have been made. You'll comply, or you'll lose your water." That's when I realized this wasn't about money, rules, or unpaid dues. This was personal. Over the next couple of days, I started digging into the situation, trying to figure out why they were targeting me. I talked to a few neighbors, and some of them quietly warned me that the HOA president had been eyeing my property for months. Apparently, he wanted to rezone my cabin's land so he could expand a private dock for himself. When I refused to sell him my lot earlier that year, he didn't take it well. And now, it was clear. This entire water cutoff threat was his revenge. But here's what the HOA didn't know. I wasn't just another cabin owner blindly hooked into their system. My property sat at the very edge of the lake, right where the main water supply line for the entire neighborhood ran directly underneath my land. Without realizing it, they were threatening the one person who had the power to control their water. And at that moment, I decided, it was time to fight back. By the third day, I'd had enough of their games. The HOA thought they could intimidate me, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. I spent that entire night reviewing old property blueprints, county records, and plumbing layouts. And there it was, in black and white, the proof I needed. The main water distribution line that fed every cabin, every dock, and even the HOA president's fancy vacation home ran directly beneath my property. I realized something critical: the HOA didn't own the line. I did. Armed with that knowledge, I decided to confront them face to face. The next morning, I walked into the HOA's office, where the president and two board members were sipping coffee like they owned the entire lake. I calmly laid the blueprints on the table and said, "Before you shut off my water, you should know you'll be shutting off your own." Their smiles disappeared instantly. The president tried to brush it off, saying, "That's impossible. The HOA controls the system." But I slid the documents across the table and pointed to the county seal. "Not according to the state," I replied. "The line crosses my private property, and under these bylaws, I have the right to restrict access if I'm harassed." For the first time, they didn't have a comeback. But I wasn't finished yet. I told them, very calmly, that if they moved forward with cutting off my water, I'd have no choice but to shut down the main valve, the same valve that supplies the entire HOA. No showers. No washing machines. No irrigation for their precious lakefront lawns. I watched their faces pale as the weight of my words sank in. Still, the president tried to save face. He leaned back, pretending not to be shaken, and said, "You wouldn't dare." I leaned in just enough for him to hear me clearly and whispered, "Try me." I walked out of that office without another word, leaving them in stunned silence. For the first time since this began, I felt the balance of power shift, and I knew the HOA was running out of options. I thought my warning would be enough to make the HOA back off, but I underestimated just how petty and desperate they were. The very next morning, I woke up to find 3 HOA trucks parked outside my cabin. A group of workers were standing around the main water junction on my property line, holding clipboards and shovels, pretending like they had authority to dig. I stepped outside, coffee mug in hand, and called out, "You're trespassing." One of the workers hesitated, but before he could respond, the HOA president appeared from behind his SUV, wearing sunglasses like he was starring in some kind of cheap action movie. He smirked and said, "We have authorization to service the line." I pulled out the county permits I'd printed the night before and held them up. "Not on my land, you don't." The workers froze. They didn't want to be part of a legal mess. But the president wasn't giving up that easily. He accused me of threatening the community and warned me that I was making a big mistake by standing in their way. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. Instead, I calmly walked over to the main valve, the one everyone in this neighborhood depended on, and placed my hand on it. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "If you touch my property, I shut this down." For everyone. The silence that followed was heavy. Even the workers stepped back, waiting to see what would happen next. That was the moment the president realized his bluff had failed. But he still tried one last trick. He said, "Fine. Go ahead. Shut it down. See how long you last when the whole HOA comes after you." I smiled, because I had already anticipated this. "Then I guess we'll let the courts decide," I replied, pulling out a folder filled with every documented threat, every email, and every voicemail they had left me. I was ready. For the first time, I saw genuine fear flash across his face. The HOA was losing control, and they knew it. The next HOA meeting was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Word had spread quickly around the lake about my confrontation with the board, and nearly every property owner showed up, filling the small conference room until people were standing in the hallway. You could feel the tension buzzing in the air, neighbors whispering, HOA members huddling, and the president sitting at the front table, trying to act calm while beads of sweat formed on his forehead. I walked up to the microphone when it was my turn to speak and laid out everything. I showed the blueprints proving the waterline crossed my private property. I presented the permits confirming my legal authority over access. And then, I played the voicemails the HOA president had left me, his threats, his intimidation, his smug promises to make my life miserable if I didn't fall in line. The room went silent. Some board members looked horrified. Others refused to meet my eyes. And the neighbors? They were furious. Many of them had been bullied by the HOA before, but they'd never had proof, until now. One by one, they started speaking up, sharing their own stories of harassment and unfair treatment. Within minutes, the tide had completely turned against the board. A motion was filed right there in that meeting to suspend the president pending an investigation. He tried to fight it, shouting about community control and rules, but no one was listening anymore. By the end of the night, the vote was unanimous. The president was removed, and the board was forced to abandon their plan to cut off my water, permanently. Walking out of that room, I didn't just feel relieved. I felt empowered. I had stood up to a system that thought it could control me, and in the end, the truth won. But here's the thing, my case isn't unique. Across the country, HOAs abuse their power every single day, and most people don't even know their rights. If you've ever faced an HOA nightmare, or want to hear more shocking cases just like this one, let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to HOA Case Files for more stories they don't want you to hear.